Welcome to Pieces for My Puzzle. I'm your host, Nikki Shipp, and I'm excited to be sharing with you my life with a son on the spectrum. This podcast is for anyone who is looking for quick tips and perspective, but most of all, for hope and inspiration. So sit back, relax, and let's put the pieces together. Hello and welcome back to another episode of Pieces for My Puzzle. I'm your host, Nikki Shipp. Thank you so much for joining us today. Last week, we had the great pleasure of speaking with Miss Carrie Burley. If you didn't get a chance to tune into that episode, please do. She had some wonderful, beautiful insights about her sleep talk process, and she was so grateful I'm so grateful that she was able to join us all the way from Australia. So if you didn't get a chance to tune into that episode, please do. This week, I am especially excited to have Dr. Roz on the show today, who does all things in the name of love. Dr. Roz is the founder of L.O.V.E Revolution and DebtFreeDegree. She is a passionate advocate for personal and societal transformation through love, which stands for letting others voluntarily evolve. Dr. Roz inspires individuals and communities to lead with love, fostering understanding, growth, and positive change. Committed to making education accessible and affordable, her Debt-Free Degree initiative empowers students to pursue their dreams without financial burden. Join her mission to change the world one heart at a time, because she does this and so much more. Please welcome Dr. Roz to the show today. Thank you so much for being here, Dr. Roz.
Thank you. I am so delighted. I am fangirling right now because I have since I had a dear friend, Dr. Candace Holmes, who was on your show.
Mm-hmm.
And so I started following the show and listened to every episode. And then just to be here with you, I am so delighted. So thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. I know I need to touch back base with Dr. Holmes. I just absolutely loved having her on the show as well, too. And I'm so glad that she was able to connect us, too, because I knew from the moment that we had our discovery call that you were going to 100% be on my show. I literally fell in love with your love concept. So thank you so much for being here today.
Yes.
Just to kind of kick things off, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your mission with the L.O.V.E Revolution? Because I really cannot wait for my audience to hear what you have to say about this.
Thank you. Yes, the name of my company is L.O.V.E Revolution. And if you think about the word REVOL, love is even backward in the word revolution. And it comes from a quote by Martin Luther King that says, "A social movement that moves merely people is a revolt. Mm-hmm. But a social movement that transforms both people and institutions is a revolution." Wow. Pieces for my puzzle is a revolution. Nikki, you are revolutionary.
Thank you.
Because so many students who are facing what Drayson faces, they encounter people who are sometimes quite ignorant, sometimes quite intentionally unkind. Mm-hmm. And you are out here in this superhero cape saying, no, we're going to make sure that we put all of these pieces literally around our puzzle. And it's this, like, a puzzle is interconnected. Mm-hmm. And that's the joy and delight of letting others voluntarily evolve and letting ourselves, that's the other definition of love, letting ourselves voluntarily evolve, because we're all interconnected. There is no, as Dr. Martin Luther King said, rugged individualism. I mean, we are all related and connected. And truly our mission at L.O.V.E Revolution is 8 billion people loving 8 billion people one heart at a time.
Wow. That is so amazing. That is so amazing. And a lot of this came from just like your background, right? So you have a really extensive background within education. Am I
Yes.
Am I
yes.
right? Yeah. Okay. I'm not hallucinating. Okay, good. I was like, we did have this conversation.
Yes, we did.
So tell our listeners a little bit about your background too. Like, what led you up to this moment to create L.O.V.E Revolution?
Yeah. So where I don't often get to talk about truly how the aspects of higher ed that I did. So I spent 35 years in and around higher education, primarily with students with disabilities. And so to have this full circle moment is really, really powerful. I was disability services coordinator at 2 different institutions, and absolutely love focusing on the ability part. And so that was what my office was what we championed. And so when folks would say something about students with disabilities or accommodations or something, I would always say, I hope I work myself out of a job. I hope that we all embrace universal design so
Mm-hmm.
that when we can. So, for example, when I left disability services and started teaching, then I did not offer any tests in my classes. And so, for me, most of my students earned A's, and I had a dean that called me in that said, "What's going on here? Because obviously your class is too easy because all your students are earning A's or high B's." And I laid out for him my syllabus, and I said, "My syllabus, you have to have 900 points for an A, but I give my students 1,400 points worth of assignments. So
Mm-hmm.
they get to pick and choose." And then there was like a make your own and some other things. So I told them, you get to choose the path that you want
Mm-hmm.
for your education. And then I demonstrated how these students had actually submitted the work, how I had graded the work. He said, "Wait a minute, how many students do you have?" And I said, "I don't know. It's like 120 or 130 students." "And you're grading and looking at individualized assignments for each one of these students?" "Yes, because it's important."
Yeah,
So
right.
when we can embrace universal design, when we can embrace, if it's good for Elizabeth, if it's good for Nikki, it's good for Drayson, it's good for everybody, then
Mm-hmm.
that's where we need to really put our focus. And so I knew from a very, very, very young age I was going to be a teacher. My grandmother was a teacher. My mom is a teacher. She's retired now.
Mm-hmm.
And so, teaching and educating is just deeply ingrained in me. The other thing that's deeply ingrained, for those of you of a certain age range, I just turned 55. We had something called Shrinky Dinks when we were little, which is
Yes.
like a piece of plastic, and you
Yep.
could write on it or draw on it or something, and then you'd put it in the oven, and it would
Evan.
shrink to about like a credit card size. And I have a
Yeah.
Shrinky that I did when I was 5 years old, and it says, "God is love, love is God," to mom and dad and Catherine, which Catherine is my sister. So I knew at the age of 5 that love was also going to be a huge part of my story. And then, Nikki, as so often does, the world comes in and goes, "Oh, love is
Yeah.
stupid and love is weak and love won't work." You know. And so then I kind of siloed love to being more like that philia love, that eros love. So like I
Mm-hmm.
love you because of conditions.
Right.
And then it was not until I encountered the philosophy and methodology of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.
Mm-hmm.
that I discovered nonviolence, and that's what brought it all back together. So everything that I do is grounded and rooted in nonviolence, which is grounded and rooted in love.
I think it's amazing too that you can look back on your life story and find where all those moments were integrated for you as well to bring you to this moment today. And I was just telling a friend of mine earlier this week that so much is, I feel like I've been through so much over the years that there's so much that's happened that brought me to this moment right now for a very, very, very specific reason.
Yeah,
And I love that you can go back and look at your life and go, yep, these were those pivotal moments for me, and
that's right.
identify those moments, because I think everyone's life story is so unique, but sometimes I don't think we take the time to go back and reflect on that, you know.
Right. Right.
And
Exactly.
so I love that you have this philosophy of leading with love. It's so intriguing to me because and the reason why I say intriguing is that it's so simplistic. Like love is love. Like, but why are we not talking more about this? Um, can you give an example of how leading with love has impacted a community or an individual that you've worked with in a powerful way?
Oh goodness. I mean, we all can think about ways that love has impacted us. Where
Yes.
I want your audience to be really thinking about is, where has agape love, that unconditional love, where has
Yes.
that impacted you? And so I see it in big ways and small ways all the time. When I go to a restaurant, or when I'm checking out at the grocery store, whatever their name tag is, then I call them by name. And
Mm-hmm.
it's amazing to me. The other day, I there was a name that was not as easy to pronounce as, say, Nikki,
Mm-hmm.
and I attempted. I and then the person, their eyes got this big, and they said, "Wow! Not only did you pronounce my name correctly, but you're the first person in 3 days that have called me by name." Like,
Oh my
she
gosh.
understood that she was there to do a task,
Mm-hmm.
and was therefore largely unseen. And
Yeah.
so when you can go in and you can say, I see you, and you have dignity and you have worth. Another amazing story is I do Leading with Love coaching.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the ladies that I was coaching has a child and in middle school. And the middle school had accused her child of something, or anyway, there was a behavior
Mm-hmm.
reportedly that the child had done. We'll just say
Right.
that. And so the school was kind of a little bit heavy-handed,
Mm-hmm.
and so my client was a little bit like, I want to go in there and I want to fight for my kid. And, I said, I understand that.
Yeah.
However, with the 3 C's of Leading with Love, one C is you're committed to
Yeah.
seeing every single individual, including the teacher that is not saying nice things about your kid, with
Mm-hmm.
love. And then you get curious, help me understand what's happening here. And
Yeah.
then you collaborate. And so when you are focused on, so if she had gone in and focused on that teacher, blah, 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 and that principal, blah,
Mm-hmm.
blah, 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 then all of a sudden it's a power struggle
Right.
between the parent and the school administrators and the teacher. Instead, what she offered was a place of really compassion and collaboration and getting curious. So she walked in from the very powerful position of, I will be my child's fiercest advocate, and
Mm-hmm.
also my child is not perfect, and also you are not perfect, and also let's figure out what happened and let's go from there.
Right.
So it took all personality out of it. And
Yeah.
then there was this idea of collaborating. And it was so powerful because they ended up, there was something, I'm not going to use the correct terminology, but basically there's sort of like a portal, and there was a ding on his record in the portal or something
Oh,
like that.
yeah. Like it was showing on his record or something. Yeah.
Something. Like, I don't think normal people could see it, but like people behind the scene, like
Yeah.
he
It
was in
was
trouble
there.
or whatever. Yes. And so through this collaboration, that was removed.
Mm-hmm.
Now,
Yeah.
if she had gone in and said, "Oh, you will remove it,"
Yeah.
and she had like created this power struggle, it'd probably
Yeah.
still be on there.
Yeah. No, it's true. And I can be the first to attest that I've gone into some of these meetings for my child feeling like I have blind rage in the background because it's so emotional. It's such an emotional at least that's how I felt. Like I just want to protect my child, and I feel like
Yes.
and it is. I've had more productive conversations when I come from a more calmer, loving approach than I have going in, feeling like I'm getting ready to guns a
Yes.
blazing. It's like
Yes. Yes.
I'm putting on the
Yes.
artillery gear because I'm thinking that I'm going to have to go into battle. And I do
Yes.
think that parents kind of enter this mindset too of the immediate feeling of having to defend everything. And I
Yes.
think that that's difficult sometimes for us as parents to stop and take that pause and take a step back and, like you said, lead with love. And
Right.
I can attest to both experiences. I've had great experiences where I have led with love, and then I can very much say I've had a lot of experiences where I did not, and I learned very quickly that it was not very productive, and nor did it work very well.
Yes. Yes.
So,
Yes.
and I joke around all the time about how I go into situations with blind rage, but I really do try to be, at least that's some of the fuel behind me
Yeah.
trying to take that action. But I think trying to really create that approach, because when you learn about other people too, you
That's right.
realize that their struggles, or you get a different perspective on their struggles and what they're going through.
That's right. That's
And,
right.
and my heart goes out to educators because I taught in
Oh,
higher education too for the better half of a decade. I loved teaching both clinical and didactic, and I loved it. And but it is hard as an educator, and I say this all the time. When people say they get mad at the teachers or whatever, I'm like, yeah, I understand that, but they have their own battles too that they have to
that's right.
work with within their administration, within their school system, and so it's not just coming from them. And so
That's right.
I always try to remember that when I'm walking into a room, especially to talk to the teachers. But
And
oh, go ahead.
again, going back to people of a certain age. I don't know how many of your listeners ever watched Andy Griffith, but there's a very early episode where Andy has kind of like meddled a little bit in Opie's educational journey, and
Uh-huh.
Helen Crump comes into the sheriff's office and she lets him have it, and she's holding her little purse and she pops it down on the desk. stay out of my affairs. I just how far we've come from a teacher being able to say to a parent,
Yeah.
I have professionalism and I will be
Yes.
treated as such, to
Yeah.
now educators are so mistreated. We
Yes.
put so much on them. The expectations we have for them are
Mm-hmm.
exorbitant. There's not another profession that they're that are graded the way
Mm-hmm.
that teachers are graded. I
Yes.
mean, if the way that a dentist got a good rating and got paid was based on how many cavities his clients have,
Mm-hmm.
then how many dentists would be in practice right now? The
Right.
dentist can only do what the dentist can do. But
Right.
then, what we are doing with everything else, is on us.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a huge heart for educators, and
Yeah. Because it
it
comes
is
from both sides. It's not
yes,
just coming from like the administrative side or district side of
right,
things. It's coming from the parents too. And even in higher education, I felt that way. I mean, these kids and I say kids, but they were really young adults. I mean, they were over the age of 18 and into their 20s. I'm teaching kids like that. And even then you still have this, there was still kind of this, I had my supervisory team on one
hmm
side telling me what to do, and then you have your kids and your families on the other side that are all having a play into that. And so
hmm
I think sometimes we don't realize that we've got it coming from all sides. And it took me a while to realize that. It took me a while to realize that because I was so engrossed in just trying to get Drayson the help that he needed.
yeah,
I think that I got really siloed into like, well, you're just against me. And that feeling of that pushback all the time, you feel like you're being attacked. And it
hmm
took me a hot minute to kind of take a step back and realize that no one's against you. It's just we just got to work this out a little differently.
right, right.
So now you have a debt-free degree program. Now, have you written a book about this? Or I know you're a published author, but you've written a book about the debt-free degree. Yes, I love it.
Yes,
For those of you
yes.
listening today, she's holding up the book. She's got her book, and we'll talk about how you can get a hold of a copy of her book here in just a little bit. But tell us a little bit about, I love that you're helping students find ways to get school funded for them, especially in higher
Thank you.
education. So,
Yes.
talk a little bit about your debt-free degree book and this initiative that you've launched.
So again, going back to very early, I love that you mentioned that, Nikki, how I can weave stories, because I'm very grateful to see how seeds that were planted in me early, how
Mm-hmm.
even though maybe they went askew or they didn't come to fruition, but they came to fruition right on time. And so
Yes.
for your listeners, that's also a metaphor for all of us, right? Is
Mm-hmm.
we have what we need inside of us, and it may not come to fruition on your particular time frame, but they do, and so that's
Right.
important. My parents said from the day I was born, you are going to go to college, and we do not go into debt for education. Now, for me, I agree wholeheartedly with the second part. We do not go into debt for education. The first part, I believe every single person needs some type of training post high school.
Mm-hmm.
However, I don't think it has to be a 4-year degree. So, an apprenticeship, entrepreneurship, the
Right.
military, for all of those
Yeah.
aspects.
Trade skills.
So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, and so for me, one aspect of debt free degree is when you are holding that baby bundle the day they're born, or you're pregnant and you're talking to them, say you're going to do something post high school, and also we're going to do it debt free, and just adding that concept from day one that
Mm-hmm.
we do not go into debt for education,
Yeah.
because currently 37% of all students who owe student loan debt owe six figures.
Yeah. I
I
believe that.
went to a very fabulous and also average state school. So no, I'm
Mm-hmm.
not throwing shade at the school. I mean, it is an amazing school. And also it's not a name that anybody's ever heard of. It's a little school here in Georgia. 8 semesters at this school is now $100,000.
Yep.
And so, how is it that we have put all this on our students and parents and others? And so, I have the Grit Blueprint to help every single student map every single one of their degrees completely debt free.
Mm-hmm.
And lots of ways that you can get in touch with me and learn about the Grit Blueprint. It really starts with that mindset.
Mm-hmm.
Because here's the thing, Nikki, if I say to you, so, let's say today is a Friday, and let's say I've got a very important class reunion 2 weeks from today.
Mm-hmm.
So if I call, a weight loss center and I go, hey, I want to lose 100 pounds in 2 weeks, give me the pill that's going to happen. And they go, oh, well, it doesn't work that way. Well, you stink. You're not good at weight loss. You're not going to help, blah, blah, blah. That's what happens.
Yeah.
People are
Yeah.
like, can you give me like some little code that's going to unlock 100 grand that I'm going to put in my
Yeah.
bank account? No, it,
Yeah.
it takes really hard work, and it takes planning, and it takes, and this is exactly why Debt Free Degree is so great for your audience,
Mm-hmm.
because you all, like you, Nikki, you are such an amazing advocate for Drayson, and you teach others how to do that and advocate in whatever way it is.
Mm-hmm.
And so your audience is already used to being methodical and
Mm-hmm.
strategic and understanding that nothing happens overnight.
Yeah.
And for so many people, they just take the student loans and then just like, I'm going to figure out how to pay it off later. And
Mm-hmm.
and they're sitting there without a mortgage.
Mm-hmm.
They can't buy a home. They can barely keep their car running because they're paying exorbitant amount of money for
Mm-hmm.
student loan debt. Meanwhile, I personally believe that higher ed is also about to implode,
Mm-hmm.
because we're at this demographic cliff. So
Mm-hmm.
not as many people applying, and then the costs have gotten so high. People are
Mm-hmm.
really evaluating, is it even worth it for me to go get a
Yeah.
4 year degree? And so all these things, this confluence, plus there's a current proposal out there that will tax as income all scholarships and grants. So now,
Oh.
we have like $46 billion in grants and scholarships out
Yeah.
there. But if
Yeah.
now those are all going to be taxed as income, and you've got somebody that maybe they earn $50,000, $60,000 in grants and scholarships and other things, but now that's taxed as income. What does that look like? So
Right.
a lot of changes on the horizon. If you just don't take the loans to begin with, then there are a lot of opportunities for you.
Yeah, and I here in Arizona, and I know we talked about this when we had our call. Like in Arizona, I'm really excited because they're creating a lot of programs for the special needs community too for college, and that gets me so excited because even if Drayson decides not to go to college, I want him to be able to have the option to, and to have
Yes.
the resources to be able to.
Yes.
And so, but with that comes the money, like you were talking about, the tuition. So I love that it not just regular typical kids, but just even neurodivergent kids families can look into something like what you're describing for these scholarships
Yes.
and these grants.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
I think that that's amazing because unfortunately I'm one of that 37%. I went back to school very late in life. I got my
Wow.
bachelor's and my master's degree, and I was like, I just got to take out the loans so that I can get my degrees and get on with my life, and it
Yeah.
is hard because you do have these huge bills.
Yes.
And I was a non-traditional student. And that's the other thing is I feel
Mhm.
like some people are going back to school. They're considered a non-traditional student and they're trying to fund school as well as their
Mhm.
mortgage, their cars,
Mhm.
their families,
Mhm.
their kids'
Mhm.
schools uniforms and books and everything else. And I think that we're seeing a wave of that here, at least here in Arizona, we are as well.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
and so it's so multifaceted. It's like, how do you tackle
Right.
this one thing? And so I love that you came out with this book to help
Mhm.
families basically figure out what works for them and how to get a
Right.
debt-free education.
Exactly. Exactly. And it's all about, people think, well, you can't do it. And my story is, I've earned 3 degrees, including my PhD, and only took $1,000 in loans. So I came out
Wow.
completely debt free. Now it's, again, it's very simple, but it's not
Yeah.
easy. And
Right.
there's got to be some commitment there, and there's got to be, some intentionality there. For
Right.
example, one way that you can earn a debt free degree is there are 33 states, and I don't know if Arizona is one of them, but there are 33 states that if you work for their state's educational higher ed institutions, then you get free tuition and fees in some way, shape, or
Mhm.
form. So in Georgia, I work for one of the university system of Georgia schools, so I
Mhm.
got free tuition and fees at any other in-state institution. So it's how I got
Wow.
my PhD for free. However,
It's amazing.
I really wanted my PhD from, an Ivy League school in a really niche degree, but that wasn't debt free. And so today I'm Dr. Roz, and nobody knows, did I get my degree at this school or at the Ivy League? And nobody even asked me, what was your major? What was
Yeah.
your, and I have a debt free PhD, but
Yeah.
it also took me 9 years because there was a bit of a gap in there for, some personal things going on, but it took 9 years. So it just is, where's your intentionality? And I have, as I've mentioned, the GRIT blueprint. The R is return on investment.
Okay.
Many people are not considering what is the return on that investment. So like I met with a family not too long ago, and the mom is an educator, and every single time she got another certificate, certainly another degree, any kind of add-on, then she got a bump in pay. Well, she has added on so many things. She owes over $200,000 in student loan debt. She doesn't really consider the ROI. How is she ever going to pay that off?
Right.
With these bumps in salary. If
Right.
you're just focused on, well, my salary went up. Well, yes, but and there are people that are, taking loans with the understanding that if I work in a certain type of school, then they'll get paid off, or if I work in a type of industry, they'll get paid off. And a lot of the programs at the federal level are being eliminated. And so, there are people, I talked to a mom, 6 months ago or so, and her daughter owed $400,000 as a medical student. And her plan was, I'll go work in a hospital and have all of that wiped out. And now that has gone away. Yeah. And so now she made plans based on what the policy was at the time. Yeah. Good on her. And then now that's eliminated. So now how is she going to pay off $400,000?
Now what's going to happen? Yeah. And it is crazy to me how expensive education has become. I mean, I thought it was expensive years ago when I went back to school, and we were lucky. My oldest son actually went into a trade skill and went through apprenticeship program. And that's how he was able to get his education. And he loves what he does. He's in HVAC, and he absolutely loves the trade, which here in Arizona, you can't be without AC. So he's in the perfect job here in Arizona.
Yes.
But he was able to get his education paid for, and we encouraged him to go back because I knew he wasn't going to be, and it's not an insult to him at all. It's just that I knew college wasn't going to be the right fit for him because of who he was, what he's a hands-on kid, and I knew that he just needed something different. So when we encouraged him to look at skill trades, we found, we had a family friend that told us about this apprenticeship program. And I'm so grateful for it because it helped him to get an education to develop a skill set, and he didn't have to pay a dime to do it.
Exactly.
And I told him, I said, you are so unbelievably lucky. And if I had known, even had the forethought of that, because you get kind of siloed into, if I just do this, then the money will come, or then I'll be able to pay it off if I just do these steps. And there is kind of a misconception with that. So I love that you offer, so in the book, you offer a blueprint to this basically of how to overcome these challenges.
Exactly. Okay. So I do the GRIT blueprint, and the G is grants and scholarships. There's 46 billion in grants and scholarships out there.
Oh my gosh, I had no idea.
The R is return on investment. We've talked about that. The I is interconnection. So it's the whole work smarter, not harder. Your older son is the exact idea of what interconnection is, because he knew the path that was great for him. What's so interesting is, similar to Arizona, you also don't want to be in Georgia without HVAC. And I was just yesterday, and I was saying, look, I am a Georgia peach, and I'm going to need heating and air, and so I need HVAC. That was the specific one that I mentioned. So I very much want your son and everybody in his profession to continue learning. The other thing is sometimes when we, even with language, because you even it was a bit of a buffer, like not insulting to him that he is not, and the nation has done a horrendous job in that.
Yes.
What we really should be saying to all of our kids, to all of them, is go be your highest, most excellent, most best self. whatever that looks like. And a
Yeah.
4-year degree is very likely not that, and that's great. And let's
Yeah.
figure out what it is. A friend of mine was saying that her this is a friend of mine who's a little bit older than me. Her son is like in his late 30s, I think, something, and still is at home.
Mm-hmm.
He loves his job, absolutely loves his job. He has a bachelor's, a master's, and a PhD in English. He
Mm-hmm.
teaches English at the community college, and he makes less than $50,000 a year. And
Mm-hmm.
his student loan debt for all those 3 of those degrees is exorbitant. And he will
Mm-hmm.
never, ever leave home. He will never, because he loves what he does. And so
Right.
they're okay with that. And so, you take somebody that has that much education and you're making
Yes.
that much money, and then you
Yeah.
look at your son, and I
Mm-hmm.
bet you he's making, maybe even double of that,
He's
maybe
doing
triple of that. I
he's
have no
doing
idea.
well. Yeah, he's doing really well. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Whether he's living with y'all or not, that it's just a mindset of the incorrect mindset that a
Mm-hmm.
college degree is always the open door to more money. It can be, but not
Yeah.
always.
Yeah, and I've said over the years, like, I'm grateful for my degrees. It has opened doors for me in pathways that I've wanted to go, directions I've wanted to go into, and I knew that I needed to have that in order to go that direction. That was where my passion was. So I'm grateful for that, but I realized that it's not built for everybody.
Yes.
And it was hard for me because at the time I was teaching at the college when he graduated high school. I was so ready for him to go to college. And he even had the option to go tuition free because I was an employee at the college and he
Oh,
didn't
yeah.
want to go. And it was heartbreaking for me. But I had to realize that that was not his path and not what he wanted to do. And so that was a big learning lesson for me with my son.
Yeah.
And I'm grateful that I allowed him to. I'm grateful that I didn't push him. I'm grateful that
Yes.
I didn't keep pushing him into something that he didn't want to be because I felt like that was an injustice to him as well, you know.
I'm going to give you a pom pom, Mama.
I got pom poms. Yay.
Good on you. Yeah. Yeah. It's
Yeah.
hard. It's hard.
Yeah,
It's hard.
absolutely.
It's hard.
Well, but,
And
go ahead. What were you going to say?
well, going back to the grit blueprint, the T is my proven triangle
Yes.
approach.
Uh-huh.
So it is a combination of SM, which is student money, FM, which are your friends, your family, your folks, the people you're familiar with. And then for those of you that are watching, I'm wearing my jacket and it says OPM. And so
Yes.
that stands for, anybody know?
I have no
Other people's
idea.
money.
Oh, I like OPM. No, I'm just kidding.
OPM, other people's money. And when you think about it, Nikki, every single dollar that we all spend, every one of us, it's always OPM. Either
Mm-hmm.
I've given my time and talent in exchange for somebody to give me their dollars. That's
Right.
OPM. Or you've given me money. I've inherited money. I've won the lottery. Like some way, somehow, it's always OPM. It's
Mm-hmm.
always somebody else's money. And
Yeah.
so, how do we leverage that? Because there's not necessarily $46 billion out there to help me buy a home or to help me buy a car. But there's
Mm-hmm.
that much money, plus all the ways that you can save money and ways that you can make money that are all in the book. And it's not that I am promoting my book. I'd be delighted if you bought my book. Thank you. That would be amazing. However, I have all these free resources that I offer because I want the information out there.
Yeah.
And it's important to me to break through what I call the human algorithm of just take the loans and figure out how to pay it off later.
Yeah.
Because as you said, Nikki, your degrees have opened doors. Yes,
Mm-hmm.
they do.
Yeah.
And then there's this other part that is harder of the paying it off.
Yeah.
Whereas imagine if you could have all the doors open for you through the degrees and have nothing to pay off.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And also, that's also the number one reason why I haven't gone for my PhD, the cost. Like
Yeah.
I'm like, well, I just can't afford any more student loans. And so it's like,
Mhm.
so I'm even inspired to look more into what your book has to say. And then my husband's
Exactly.
going to be like, you're going to do what? Go back to school for what? But
Uh-huh.
well, we'll burn that bridge when we get there. but so I want people to know before we end the show today, because your goal is to transform the world one heart at a time, and I love that you bring up this leading with love concept, because it really is the basis of humanity, I feel like, and we just don't even address it.
Yes.
What do you believe is the biggest barrier to that kind of transformation today? And how do you have any quick tips for parents on how we can overcome that?
I believe the biggest barrier is something that Martin Luther King referred to as rugged individualism.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we're all taught, particularly here in the U.S., that you pick yourself up by your own bootstraps and you do it on your own and you don't need anybody. And I was really taught that. I mean, it was really very much ingrained. It's also ingrained in this idea of rugged individualism. It's also ingrained that you need to pick a team or pick a side,
Yeah.
and then therefore whatever side or whatever, like, if it's, a particular race, if it's, some sort of, political party, whatever it is, here are the lines, and these people are in and these people are out.
Mm-hmm.
And so the quick tip is nobody's out. There are no
Yeah.
lines. We're all connected. And what happens, Nikki, is when I say I want 8 billion people to love 8 billion people, a lot of times people will say, I am so good with that. I am great with that. I can do that. I can love 7.9 billion people, but those people, I don't love those people, and I don't want them to love me. And they're lulled in this false sense of, if I can only love 7.9 billion people, I'm doing good enough. And it's that idea.
It's conditional. Yeah.
It is that somebody is out. And, when I think about this concept of, are there policies, are there politicians who are promoting certain policies? Are there things that you say to yourself, oh, I would never stand for that for myself or my family, but
Mm-hmm.
I really don't give a darn if it happens to your family?
Yeah.
And if so, how is that loving?
Yeah.
Because the family that you're talking about, they also have loved ones.
Right.
And because we're all interconnected, and, Dr. King talks about that, how we're all a part of this world house.
Mm-hmm.
And we so often really sort of glorify things and money and materialism. And
Mm-hmm.
we just completely discount someone's humanity.
Yeah. That's so
And so
true.
seeing the dignity of every single human. And I was having this conversation with somebody recently, and this person is a really good friend of mine. And she said, I can't get on board that everybody deserves dignity. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. How is that?
Right.
How is that loving?
Yeah.
If we can't even find a point of commonality that every human has dignity.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's where we
Absolutely.
are. Yeah.
So
So I
profound.
tell this story, and it's one of my favorite stories. I was standing outside. It was like in a strip mall, and I was standing outside waiting for the store to open. And there was this kid, and he was, I don't know, maybe 2.5 or 3, and he was running up and down the sidewalk, and it was just me and his mom and him. And it was like drizzly. It was in the fall, and it was, kind of rainy, drizzly. And he is just running, 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 running. And she called him by name. She said, "Blah blah. Do you want to put on your coat?" And he goes, "No, thank you." And he's just running. She goes, "Your body, your choices."
Yeah.
I looked at her and said, "Way to go, Mama. Way to go."
Yeah. That's
How easy
amazing.
is it to help us give autonomy?
Yeah.
And it's like, I was actually on another podcast, and the host was saying that with her kids, she'll say, "Do you want to put on the purple shoes or the pink shoes?" Like, we're
Mm-hmm.
still putting on shoes, but
Mm-hmm.
you get to pick.
Mm-hmm.
Like all the different ways that we can give people autonomy and dignity, and encourage this idea of, I see you, and you're beautiful. And also the idea that everybody else is too. And
Mm-hmm.
so oftentimes, in terms of my work at the Martin Luther King Center, people will talk about certainly how awful we are to one another. And,
Mm-hmm.
and one of the ways that that's so evident is in the predominance of school shootings.
Mm-hmm.
And so what happens is, a young person who oftentimes has been bullied and mistreated
Mm-hmm.
decides to act in a way that causes tremendous amount of violence. And, their frontal lobe is not fully developed.
Mm-hmm.
And then let's say that they go in, and there are 15 students that
Mm-hmm.
pass away. The shooter passes away. Well, then the headline is 15 students have passed away, when in
Mm-hmm.
actuality 16 students have passed away.
Right.
And who's bringing casseroles to that mother, the mother of the shooter? You know,
Mm-hmm.
who is saying, "Wow, the shooter had dignity too," and
Mm-hmm.
we as a collective did not let that person know that. You
Yeah.
know, how can we put from the time our children are born, how can we put a community of 100 people around them to say, I love you, I see you, you're not perfect.
Right.
However, you know, you've got all these great traits, and let's figure out a way that we can pull each one of them out rather than saying you don't meet this criteria, or you don't meet this criteria, or you're not this, or you're not that, and
Mm-hmm.
therefore I want nothing to do with you.
Wow. So profound, Dr. Roz. Thank you so much. I greatly appreciate you being on the show today, and you're such a wealth of information and knowledge, and I love what your message is to the world. And I know I'm definitely going to try to love everyone more, one heart at a time. So thank you again for being on the show today. For those of you listening, I'm going to post all of Dr. Roz's information into the show notes so that you can get a hold of her, and feel free to purchase her book as well. I know I have it on my list to purchase too, so I can't wait. Maybe I can figure out how to get that PhD debt free. So
There you go.
that's right. So, well, this concludes our episode for today. If you have questions, comments, or even a show topic that you would like to hear about, please feel free to send me an email at info@piecesformypuzzle.com. I'd love to hear from you. Don't forget to like and follow us on Facebook and Instagram if you have not done so already, and feel free to subscribe to our YouTube channel as well. If you like what you're hearing, please spread the word so that we can continue to empower autism families. I would love that. And feel free to give us a good rating on your preferred podcast platform of choice. Thanks again for tuning in, and until next time, keep working on your puzzle, and remember, you don't have to have it all solved in a day. Take care.